Thank you for coming along.
No problems.
First of all, I'd love to hear what does Troubleshoot do? Tell me about Troubleshoot.
What does Troubleshoot do? So the nuts and bolts is basically connecting travellers with photographers around the world. I guess the more emotive part of it is trying to capture great memories. We have local photographers that are providing people with a bit of a walking tour slash professional photography tour along the way, pointing out, I guess, destination insights as well as getting great photos. Pretty simple concept. It's kind of crazy that there wasn't someone in Australia on the landscape kind of jumping all over it already, but yeah.
Right. Okay. And how did the business start?
So as per the intro, I joined the business in 2016. I get ripped on a lot by all of my friends because I've got the co-founder title, even though my sister started the business before I was involved. She went on her honeymoon with my brother-in-law, obviously, to New York. And one of our friends was an aspiring photographer in New York. He had reached out to them and said, hey, can we do a little photo shoot in the streets of Manhattan? I'll take you to some of my favourite spots. We'll get some photos along the way, and I'll take you out for drinks afterwards. So they went on this walking tour of kind of the Brooklyn Dumbo area, and got the photos back a week or so later. Sarah put 2 or 3 photos up on her Facebook and got all these inquiries and comments from friends saying, hey, who's this? Like, can we use this guy for our photos? How much did it cost? And that was kind of the inception of it. She's like, well, surely, I think most people, like, can I monetize this idea? Like, this is a crazy thing. They went to Bali on a trip 6 or so months later. She wanted to do the same sort of thing, like connect with a local and do this photography thing. The response from the Balinese photographers was like, yeah, just send us like $1,000 via PayPal and we'll meet you at the Bintang, spot, like just a G up. So she's like, okay, we've got to create a platform where these people are vetted and tested and we can sort of guarantee that we're connecting people with quality.
Okay, interesting. And so how did you come to be involved?
I was working in commercial real estate for 7 years. And when Sarah sort of decided to quit her job and work on Travelshoot full time, she'd been sort of egging me to come along. She's really creative and great with the stuff that I'm terrible at, but she doesn't like the business side of it. She doesn't like accounting or lawyers or any of the professional side, but in terms of building something cool and the concept, that's definitely her strength. So she reached out to me quite a lot and was saying, hey, are you interested in coming across? And being a former real estate agent, I was like, how much are you going to pay me? And obviously that money wasn't the same as joining a startup. We went backwards and forwards for a while. I thought the idea could really be big. And she was kind of tossing up, do I keep this as a business that's operating in the front room of my house, or do we try to make this something really big? And obviously, again, the real estate side of it, the salesy, I was like, let's just make it huge and let's go after this massive market. So we ended up having a morning meeting, me and her, having breakfast, and she's like, I really want you to come across. I'm like, I'm really thinking about it. She's like, well, you don't have a choice anymore. I'm like, what do you mean? She's like, oh, I'm pregnant, so like, you're the only person I trust to come across. So you actually are just joining the business. So it kind of happened. I wanted to do it, but it was at the same time, I was like, hey, I'm also pregnant. I'd love you to come across. So it made it an easier decision, one I was already leaning towards, but it made it, definitive.
Wow, okay. So what about if she's pregnant and how is she involved in the business then? Is she now looking after your niece and nephew?
Niece. Yeah, she is still insanely involved. We actually signed our term sheet. Well, she signed the term sheet about, I think, 12 or 13 hours before she gave birth in hospital.
Committed.
And she was the one kind of emailing me saying, have you seen this? Have you seen this? While she was in hospital. So she's just one of those females that's just one of those, like, I'm going to prove you wrong all the time, which is pretty funny. But yeah, she's super involved. Admittedly, her hours frustrate the hell out of me now because she sends me emails at 2 a.m. and I'm a 7 till 7 kind of try to operate in, and she sends me emails sporadically. But she does massive hours, but just at crazy times of day.
Okay, and what's it like to work with your sister so closely?
Frustrating. I guess it's a double-edged sword. Like we get into a fight really quickly, whereas if it was just someone that you don't know, you'd probably labour over it more and take it home, whereas we just go at it. The flip side of it is that after 5 minutes, we're just back to being friends. Like it kind of blows over really quickly. We kind of had to give the employees that we've hired kind of a bit of a heads up to say, like try to ignore some of our arguments. Like we'll try to keep them civil, but it's between her and I. But no, it's pretty fun. Like it's definitely eye-opening to see how your sibling works, because I only knew her, as a sister, not how she works. So it's pretty eye-opening to see the things that she's really good at. But yeah, very frustrating at times.
I've got two sisters, so I can definitely empathise. Looking at like the product side then, so photography is something that's quite subjective. How do you handle that quality control aspect?
Yeah. I personally thought before I got involved in the business it'd be a bigger problem with people kind of, even just those, I mean, you'd hope people aren't like this, but it's just by virtue of kind of how things are. People saying, I don't like them, can I have a refund, even if they do like them, because it is subjective. You can kind of, what do you like? So we do, and it's probably the most time-consuming part of the business is testing the photographers. There are some other photography platforms out there, but they don't do the same level of testing that we have to do. We've got an in-house photographer who works for us, and she's basically a scout. So she reaches out, finds the photographers that she really loves in that destination, whether it's through scrolling through Instagram pages or Googling. Reaches out, she has an hour Skype interview with them to check that they know their area really well, to check that they're the sort of fun, friendly people. We have a kind of jerk test. So you want to get great photos, but the flip side is some photographers are introverts and they're creative and they don't really talk to you behind the lens, and we have to kind of weed them out as well. We want those fun, bubbly sort of people. So they go through an hour Skype interview with our scout, and then they have to do a free 1 hour shoot for us, where we set them up with friends, family, travel agents, whoever we can, and we get kind of real life feedback from those people, whether they had a good time, the photographer showed up on time, the communication leading up to the shoot was good. And then we kind of judge the quality of the photos. Not me personally, but the photographer that we have. She's a really recognisable photographer in Melbourne, and like we just kind of trust her judgment. She's doing really well so far.
Okay, interesting. And what about the packages that you sell? Like, how many iterations of those did you go through to try and find the right what to sell?
Yeah, and it's another thing that we get asked about a lot, like pricing. We can make it way cheaper, but then the quality of the photography would be crap. Like, because we can get the hobby photographer who does it in their spare time for $50, which, would make the product kind of not that valuable. It's kind of at that point, you may as well use your iPhone. We're not competing in that space. We want the high quality, like, the luxe end of the market. I guess the one big benchmark for us was always, and the common one is like wedding photography cost. The average cost of wedding photography in Australia right now is $4,300, which is insane. So that's kind of, I guess, what people will use as a point of reference to what we're doing. So, admittedly that's a full day and, it's more hours involved, but for us to then say, look, we can do an hour shoot, including all of the high-res photos, a tour of the city, local insights, turned around within a week for $399. When we compare it and benchmark it against that wedding photography, I think people realise it's probably good value for money.
Sure. And on that point, on the wedding photography, are you just doing travel photography at the moment, or are you also expanding into that as well?
We didn't want to. Two reasons. One, a lot of our photographers are wedding photographers by trade, and we didn't want to step on their toes and kind of take away their big earners that they do on the weekends. And obviously the complexity of having to organise wedding photography. Our product is fairly basic in terms of it's a 1 hour shoot while you're travelling. There's no risk of a bridezilla sending through 1,000 photos before the shoot with what we do, really. We do get that sometimes, but not very often. But we kept getting inquiry from some of our partners, or people trying to show up to a 1 hour shoot dressed in their wedding gear and not telling us. Even though it says on our terms and conditions in big, black, bold writing, not for weddings. people would still take the piss and show up in bridal gear. There's grey areas with it. Some people say we want to get our post-ceremony photos, and sometimes we do it, sometimes we don't. It depends. If it's a massive group and it's clearly wedding photos, we kind of say no. But if it's just two people that have gone overseas. So the happy medium that we came up with was like an elopement product, which has gone live in the last month, which is small weddings, less than 20 people in about 25 destinations that we have, including about 100 photos, I think it is, for $1,500. So it's still disruptive price-wise. It's quite cheap, and it's for someone who doesn't want to have the full bells and whistles, $6,000, $7,000, $8,000 wedding photography package. So yeah, we do offer it, but we're trying not to step on the toes of our guys. If we do get that requirement for a big full bells and whistles wedding, we just have like a referral system. So we just refer that work to our photographers in that destination.
Okay. Interesting. Got a few questions from the audience already. So the first one is, can you explain a little bit more about the jerk test and how that works?
Yeah. Again, it's pretty subjective. I think you get a gut feel from someone on Skype straight away. And our scout photographer is like the most lovely, timid person who doesn't judge people at all. So if she straight away says, like, I'd probably be more judgmental. If she says, and I'm not sure about this person, we'll still send them through to the test shoot phase. But it's things like being late and not appreciating other people's time. Like, people are away overseas, they often don't have a phone on them, or if they do, they don't have roaming on because it costs so much money. So to set up a time, if they're like 30 minutes late, like that's kind of straight away a black mark against the name. And then just little things. We had a photographer show up to a shoot with no shoes on. Sounds small, but to the wrong person that could come off. They just paid $400, $600 and you're not wearing any shoes. I'd be a little bit annoyed. So just little things, yeah.
Excellent. Excuse me. Next question. Can you tell us a bit more about where the business is now in terms of how much staff, the volume of work, your revenue?
Yeah. So, we're definitely still early stage. We closed our first round of funding at the very end of last year. So it was kind of like a Christmas-ish present to get that money. We have 6 full-time and a few part-time staff. It's not really a staff-intensive business. The staff that we'll add as we grow will really just be servicing bookings, and a single person can probably handle about 25 to 30 bookings a week, just by virtue of the automated system. So once a booking's made, it really shouldn't be touched unless there's a problem. So we're kind of the stopgap, but they get automated emails throughout the process and after the process. So it's pretty low touch. The things that we have to be careful growing is obviously we have to hire 1 more staff probably for customer service. But outside of that, it's probably, as we grow, more marketing money, and like, who knows where to spend marketing money? Like, there's so many different avenues. In terms of like our shoot growth, and I can talk about it more with our channel partners. We kind of were hoping that the travel agent and the bricks and mortar stores would be our silver bullet, and we could just throw all our eggs in that basket, and that would be what got us this huge growth. I think in time that might be the case, but it's a slow moving beast. Everyone has told us like Flight Centre's great, but it's a hunting license. Like, you've got to go out and make it work, and it will take 3, 5, 10 years. It's not going to happen overnight with them. So in the interim, you've got to be handling all the other stuff. So our booking volume is still really low. We're kind of doing 15 bookings or thereabouts a week. So it's at a reasonable level, but it's obviously still early stage. So we're hoping that through the course of the next year, we can get up to sort of 35, 40, 50 bookings a week.
Cool. And so you mentioned before about your travel partners, the travel agents. Can you tell us a bit more about how that came about?
So Sarah reached out to Flight Centre really early on. I think she might have had 10 or 15 photographers on the network, like nothing. She reached out to Flight Centre to say, I've got this idea. Would you be interested in piloting the idea in a handful of your stores, or even just one store, and we'll just see if this works. And they had a board meeting, and they kind of said, look, we really like the concept, we can see where it fits. It's a niche and something that we could offer that our competitors aren't offering at the moment. But it's kind of you're all in or you're not. So they gave us the option to sign up, but it's signing up with all stores, which is pretty intimidating when you've got 10 photographers on the network. So she said, look, give us 6 months and we'll get it up and running. And that was kind of when we started talking as well. And yeah, basically bought ourselves 6 months, grew the photographer network from 10 or 15 photographers to about 100, and grew our destinations from just Australian to about 50 at that time. And then we did like a quiet launch or a soft launch with Flight Centre. It has been slow moving, but it's one of those things that it is a new concept. And as much as it's great to sign a contract with head office, the people at the bottom don't know what we do. So it's getting around and like still figuring out the best way to communicate what we do to the staff at the bottom.
Okay, and so do you have access to kind of help train those staff and talk with them?
Yeah, Flight Centre have been amazing for us because I think I'm just guessing, because we don't have a competitor, unlike say a hotel who, if a hotel said, hey, can we just go into every store and just speak to them about how good our hotel is, they'd be like, no, get lost, because then every hotel will want to go in and bombard people. But because we don't have a competitor, they're kind of like, yeah, go in and talk to them about it. So they've been really helpful in sort of giving us access to the stores. So yeah, we've had some really good wins with some local stores that we've been focusing on the Gold Coast.
Excellent. And is Flight Centre your only travel partner?
No, we did a deal, funnily enough, a guy that I met on spring break in Cancun and drank with him for a week. I reached out to him when I came into the business because I knew he worked for Hello World. And he's like, oh, I can get you a meeting and we can have a chat. So we had a meeting with his boss. I thought he was a travel agent working in a store, but he was the Victorian manager for Hello World. And we ended up signing a contract at that meeting with Hello World, which was pretty crazy. In saying that, the journey with Hello World to date, they operate very differently to Flight Centre in that they're franchised and you kind of have to get approval from each of the stores. They've just gone through this huge merger themselves as a business, so there's a backlog of loading. So we actually haven't been able to really leverage that opportunity yet. So that's something, I guess, through the course of this year and next year will be a big focus for us, is trying to start to make that relationship work. But to date, it's been pretty quiet.
Okay. On the channels, in terms of where your customers come from, what's the split between your travel partners and, say, like organically just coming through the website?
Up until recently, we were getting more through Flight Centre, but we hadn't been spending hardly any time, if any time at all, on direct. We always kind of thought of this business as a B2B play, even though like we've got this super visual product that we can use to advertise great photos. So in the last month and a half, we hired a digital marketing manager who's epic, and been meeting with heaps of, love the word, I still don't know what it means, growth hackers. I think people think they are growth hackers, but they're not. And focusing on a digital strategy. So we've been spending a lot more time. So at the moment, it's probably 50-50, but I think the shift will be B2C a lot more than what it is right now.
Okay. And that's not the original idea?
No, it's not. We thought it'd be channel partners. And it's just one of the, like that might change again over time as, you know, we've heard from some Flight Centre agents like, oh, it'd be great if you guys get to a point where it's like kind of people know your brand and are asking us for it. And it's like, yeah, that's cool. But the travel space is so massive. It's like, it's unlikely that our brand will cut through quickly. So we kind of have to go after that consumer direct.
Sure. Just got an audience question about how you incentivize, say, the staff at these travel agents to sell the product.
Yeah, it's a hard one. We naively thought, hey, we've got this commission model with Flight Centre, and we thought the agent got quite a chunk of that commission when we jumped into the space, and they don't. We thought they got like $50, $60, whatever it is, and they end up getting less than a cup of coffee. So it was okay, they're not going to get any money out of it per se, So how else can we get them to sell the product? So for them, like we're offering things like we've got a few things in place, which is trying to get them repeat business. So for a travel agent who books a Travelshoot, first of all, they get to see the first 3 images of the album to kind of show them their customer's journey, so long as the customer's consented to showing those photos. We also get a hero image printed out onto a postcard, branded Flight Centre. There's no Travelshoot branding on it. And we send it with a prepaid envelope to the agent for them to write a welcome home card with one of the hero photos from our Travelshoot experience to their customer. So it's kind of this, makes the agent look as if they've done something really nice. In reality, they've just posted a postcard that we've sent to them. So that's kind of the non-financial thing. We do some incentives and like flash sales and stuff to try to spike interest. Trying to do some, I guess, fun stuff with them as well. We did like a 2-month thing, which was like Feel Good Fridays down on the coast, where every Friday we hired some university interns basically to go out to all of the Flight Centre stores on the coast and Escape Travel stores on the coast and drop them off funny things, as well as like a customer story. I'm planning on, for our wedding, a package. I've been conned into going out to all of the Flight Centre stores in a wedding dress to like drop off info about what we're going to do. So yeah, just trying to do something different. I went around with another supplier for Flight Centre and watched him do his spiel, and it was literally walking in, throwing the brochure on the table with the agent, opening up, this is what we do. It was so fucking boring, and I was just sitting there going, no wonder they're not selling this product. And I'm like, we've got to do something different to this. So just something different, going in, like even if it's just not talking about the product and just saying hello and then walking away, or staff discounts. How do we get you guys interested?
Okay, and have these activities had an effect so far?
Yeah, they have. I guess the problem is how scalable that is. So as much as I'd love us to be doing that and hiring uni students all over Australia to go and do these cool things, it's hard to manage. Is the return on investment in doing those things that great? Probably not. And because we haven't tested that B2C market really well, we need to kind of pull some of that money that we have and put it to B2C to test different markets. Because at the moment, like the Flight Centre bookings tick over week to week without us doing anything. Funnily enough, we get bookings from Flight Centres we've never spoken to every week. So they must just find us or hear about us through word of mouth. So yeah, no, like I'd like to keep doing it, but it's probably something that we'll look back into once we grow a little bit more.
Sure. Just got a couple more audience comments and questions. So first one's a comment. Your product's amazing. I would use this on my next holiday and recommend it. So got one fan in the audience.
It's been funny. That's the thing though. Like we get that, like I wish I'd known that, or I wish I knew this existed when I went on my honeymoon type thing. We get that a lot. So that's really positive.
That's good.
Thank you, whoever that was.
Next one
Discount for you.
Yeah, whoever you are. The next one's, what's been the most difficult part of establishing a company within the market? I think in the context of being like having no competitors or few competitors.
It's probably just that frustration of like people loving the concept or the idea of the product, particularly like with travel agents. Like they love the idea, they love the concept, but you walk away from the store and there's no bookings and you're like, why? Like you love the idea, the agents in the store are kind of our demographic and they seem to really resonate with what we're doing. And just that frustration of nothing kind of eventuating after you've committed some time. Taking a step back from that though, as a Flight Centre agent, you've got, or a travel agent in general, you've got 1,000 products to push after you've sold, you know, the flights, accommodation and travel insurance, and you don't want to risk losing those 3 by pushing another ancillary product. So I get the difficulty there, but that's probably the hardest thing, was probably relying on channel partners. Because as much as I get pumped up about talking about it when I'm like there and like, you know, trying to like say all the different little places where our product fits, that same message obviously isn't conveyed by the agent. So I guess, again, focusing back on that B2C side of the market where we can control that messaging. But that's the biggest frustration to date, has been travel agents. It's such a huge network of people, but yeah, getting that cut through with agents is really hard.
So I guess it's not just competing against other travel photographers, it's every travel ancillary
It's competing
product.
against a whole heap of other things. I mean, we know where I think we have a pretty good understanding of where we fit. The 20-year-old guy who's getting a $300 return flight to Bali to drink bintangs for a week. Not our customer. He might be, and he can buy one, but like we understand that's not the guy. It's the couple that are spending 10 grand to go to Paris on their honeymoon. And relatively speaking, the cost of our product is, is quite minor.
Absolutely. Jumping back to, you mentioned before that Sarah was signing the term sheet in hospital.
Yeah.
Can you tell me a bit more about the funding that you've raised for Troubleshoot?
Yeah, so we it's a bit convoluted how the deal was structured. We're just at the moment finalising some additional funding from Advanced Queensland through the BDF fund. We had a guaranteed initial funding of 500 grand, and we'll probably top that up a little bit more. I think to 700 in total. It was pretty daunting. That was probably the main reason, one of the main reasons Sarah wanted me to come across was to help her raise cash. I don't know why, because I hadn't done it before, and I don't think any startup founder has done it before when they jump in. It's just kind of like, okay, I understand the concept, I need to get money from people. But outside of that, so we sat down with people who were in the process of doing it. There was some guys who I knew from school who had raised money, who I caught up with and was like, how did you do this? Like, who are these people? How did you find them? What did you have to do? Figuring out the process in actually starting to reach out. So I think we did it with a fair bit of method. Like, we did take some time to sort of step out how we were intending to raise the cash. But yeah, same as everyone always says, it took longer than we thought. The handshake and agreement of the actual deal or the term was one thing, but then getting it through all the legal stuff thereafter was another whole challenge in itself. We'd mapped out about 25 people that we wanted to reach out to. Half of those were through my real estate role. Half of them were connections Sarah had made or connections I had made as we were talking about wanting to raise money. And we made a list of those 25 people and we basically rated them. Wouldn't want anyone to see how we rated them, but rated them in terms of, is this money only? They don't offer us anything at all and they're not startup savvy. Is this money from someone who is startup savvy but doesn't really have an impact on our business in terms of it opening a door for us? And then the last column was, ticks all the boxes, has connections into the travel space, is savvy with this sort of thing. And then we basically approached it top to bottom. So we started with the person who we who we least wanted the money from to get our pitch better and better.
Okay.
So the person who was least likely to give us the cash and who was just money and nothing else, we started with those guys. And the first pitches were pretty rough. We also threw in some people in our first kind of week of pitching that we knew were super negative about what we were doing, just to get grilled, just to get all those really hard questions out of the way and try to come up with the rebuttals on the fly. So by the time we kind of got to the end, we knew we'd have it pretty crisp. So that's how we got to there. Creative Enterprises Australia were interested. And funnily enough, we got a meeting with Steve Baxter, who had basically said, his former advisor who we were speaking with had said, look, I can get you the meeting with Steve, but he has no interest in your business. He doesn't like travel. He doesn't like startups as early stage as you guys. He's going to say no, so don't go in there trying to pitch. He said just go in there and ask questions about who he can connect you with that might be interested.
And was Steve on your list of 25?
No, he wasn't.
Okay.
Because we've been told he's a no-go. So as much as I was like, I really want to go and prove him wrong, we ended up going into that meeting and it was just to sit down to chat about what we were doing and what we wanted to get out of the meeting. But we ended up sort of saying, look, would you be interested? And he's like, I'm actually very interested. Come back in a week's time and let me digest it all. We got sent a due diligence checklist, which was fucking massive, that day. So we had to basically create half of these documents that we didn't even have. And yeah, it was done pretty quickly. We went back a week later. He gave us an offer. Again, the real estate agent in me like negotiated back, and he basically said, no, that's the offer, which was pretty hard because I was like, can't we just squeeze it a little bit? And Sarah's like, let's just take it. So we ended up doing the deal. And yeah, that was probably in middle of October when the funds finally arrived in December.
Okay. And was this the first funding that you'd had for the business?
Yeah, first round of funding. Yeah.
Okay. And what about the My Shark Tank experience? That was a bit before your time?
It was before me, but I guess that was, kind of, the validation. Sarah did that episode of My Shark Tank, which was like a spin-off of the first season. It was best new business concept. It was kind of really early stage, non-operational businesses for a prize of 10 grand. She won her round and got like quite a few emails because she flashed her email on us like on a pitch during the show, which is stupid. She got all these booking inquiries and she had to kind of go back and say, hey, like, thanks for the interest. I don't actually have any photographers at this stage, but thank you. So that validated for her, and after she went on that and got those emails, she quit her job the next day.
Wow.
Which is pretty ballsy.
Yeah.
I wouldn't have done it, but she did.
There you go. Actually getting a lot of questions about from the audience about Sarah. So first one's about what's her background? What was she doing beforehand?
Yeah, she was working for, which you probably will laugh why she was super keen to quit her job. She was working for Brisbane City Council. She was a project manager, so she was doing IT change. So imagine trying to get the 65, 70-year-old Brisbane City Council worker who's been there for 40 years to change from Outlook to Gmail. Like, just, yeah, pushing shit uphill. But so that was her job. Business analytics and IT change.
Okay.
Yeah.
Second question is, so obviously Sarah's got a baby now.
Yeah.
Is she on maternity leave?
No. No, she's not. She had 6 months of maternity leave.
Okay.
But she was still working 30 hours, I'd say, a week. It was one of those things, you just don't know how it's going to go. Like, she's been fortunate that she's had a baby who's been really good, who has slept, obviously some nights better than others. But she has been across everything. She hasn't kind of stepped a foot out. It's her baby still, in terms of the business, not her actual baby. So no, she's still been really involved. She had like a month or so where she was kind of just light touch, but still pretty heavily involved. As of sort of, I think it was April, after her 6 months had finished of maternity leave, she kind of committed, set days in the office, and then obviously contactable like outside of the office whenever.
Okay, and was the maternity leave kind of part of the negotiations in the funding?
Yeah, look, it was funny or not, when we were like having our meeting, she was 7.5 months pregnant, so there was no hiding it. We'd pretty much start the meeting with, hey, look, first of all, we'll tick this box. Yeah, she's pregnant. She's not just fat. And that was my joke. She didn't like it so much. So there was that, and then the other thing, obviously, was the brother-sister thing, which some people thought was good, and others, because other people were like, well, prefer that over maybe husband and wife, because there's obviously that opportunity where versus brother and sister, as much as we're fight, we're still going to be brother and sister. But yeah, no, the maternity thing definitely came into play, and we called it out, like, from the outset. Some people straight away were put off by it. Funnily enough, I mean, I thought Steve might have responded to it differently, but he's been so amazing with it all. Like, he's been, I guess, super helpful and understanding, having kids of his own. So he gets it, but kind of also the big thing was you're still going to be involved regardless of having a baby or not. And Sarah's been awesome.
Cool. Next question is, if you had one key piece of advice for dealing with investors, what would it be?
We got told by someone else before we got the money that you need to do as much due diligence on them as they're going to do on you, which was pretty important. So getting an understanding of whether during those early meetings, whether people are going to ride you on success or failure. Things aren't going to go as to plan every month, every week. So having those conversations early stage to figure out how much reporting are we going to be having to doing? How much of, how many face-to-face meetings? What sort of level of this do you need? What are you going to do if things go backwards? Like all the what ifs and kind of ticking them off and getting a really good understanding of that, I think is important in dealing with investors. And also picking ones that can actually open doors for your business. Like money's one thing, but like you want someone who can open some doors for you. Like if you're fortunate that you can kind of pick the ones that you want, outside of just the cash, it's kind of like, okay, can this person or does this person have a contact that could be a game changer for us?
Absolutely. Moving on to the accelerator, so the Qantas one. Can you tell us a bit more about how you got into that and what's that's offering Troubleshoot? Yeah,
we got sent. We saw that Qantas were running their first accelerator program. Which is a 12-week accelerator, a couple of contact days a week down in Sydney. And straight away, we're just like, well, like Qantas, like what a brand, even for nothing else, just a brand to be aligned with was such a good opportunity. So we flew down to Sydney to pitch, Sarah and I, and it's our first kind of accelerator experience or pitching in this environment experience, and there was 500 businesses who were pitching on the day. So that was straight away super intimidating. Just don't know who's there and the strength of their businesses. Before we pitched, we didn't actually know the level of days a week or anything that we were committing to. We just kind of like, let's just go and do it, see if we get in or not, and then we'll figure it out from there. Even though Sarah's kind of got limited time as it is, and then to have a baby and to be going to Sydney, we didn't really think that one through that much. But so we were chosen as one of 6 startups, which is awesome, and it started at the start of June. So I guess the intention of that program is just to open doors to that network. Whether it's Jetstar Asia, which is a lot of leisure travellers for us, if we can get access to some of their customers, like it is a huge opportunity for us to have a brand like that behind it, and also exposure to those customers. Because that's our problem at the moment. It's that like grinds my gears hearing, oh, I wish I knew that that existed when I went on my holiday. It's like, fuck, how do I let you know now so you know so you can book it? So that was kind of the reasoning behind the Qantas thing. So it's been super challenging again, particularly for Sarah. I shouldn't say it's challenging for me, I'm fine. But like first nights away from baby, pretty tough, particularly when it's 3 days in a row. Her partner works fly in, fly out as well. So she's kind of left some weeks super solo, using babysitter and mum and whatever to help. So it's been a big opportunity, but it's been challenging as well.
Wow. And what kind of sessions are you doing there? What kind of support are you getting from the accelerator?
So it's kind of a full day of workshop stuff on a Tuesday, and then mentor sessions either side of that Tuesday. You kind of call out early on in the piece which arms of Qantas or Jetstar or whatever that you're kind of hoping to be working with. And then it's really, I guess, fleshing out who the right people to speak to are. It's like a warm door. Like me reaching out through the info@Qantas email probably take me about 6 years to get anywhere, but getting to the right person straight away and getting eyeballs on us is pretty amazing. So it's a day a week of workshopping. Some of it's super relevant. Some of it is probably like, we did a session on patents. I nearly fell asleep. Not really relevant for us, but for the most part, super relevant workshopping stuff. And then the mentor stuff is really great as well.
Right. And are they the mentors within Qantas or just the network?
Both. So half, I'd say, within Qantas network, and then the other half are people that they brought in from all different walks of life. So CEO, like the CEO from Deliveroo came and did a session, which was really eye-opening. Some really good digital growth hackers again. Like we had a session, and I actually had a one-on-one session with a young guy who'd kind of done 6 or 7 different businesses, just all via Facebook ads, and they're all 7-figure businesses, and just learning his little tricks. Some of them, like I was kind of a bit, you can do that legally, okay, whatever. But no, really amazing insights, and some of the other businesses that are there, that are in the program as well, are just epic.
Okay, and being able to learn from those businesses as well?
Yeah, look, they're not all, which is the funny thing is they're not all super travel specific. They're kind of a lot of lots of different stuff. But yeah, and on all different stages as well. Some that are killing it in markets overseas, which are obviously like, hey, can you do that connection to these people? And vice versa. And that's kind of the benefit of it as well. We went into it, it's like, hey, if we've got these 12 other businesses that are all on this journey that know 10 great contacts within the travel space, like even that alone is worth its weight in gold.
Definitely. And are you, sorry, I forgot my question actually. I'll have to come back to it. 2 audience questions at the moment. Is there anything that you wish you'd done differently early on while approaching companies for the B2B market?
We should have gone B2C quicker. I think that was a hesitation because that was neither my skill set or my sister's skill set in like digital marketing. We had engaged an agency to help out early on, but had really limited success off 1 or 2 small campaigns and kind of judged the conversion from those campaigns on what the conversion would be for future campaigns, and that was just really the wrong attitude. And Facebook ads, like, again, not my forte, but like I'm slowly learning, and it's not that complicated. Like there's obviously heaps of different variables, but with having such a visual product, we've got an image library of tens and tens of thousands of images to use to kind of promote what we're doing. So yeah, the one big mistake I think was probably not going after that space sooner.
Okay. Next question: did you actually apply for Shark Tank, the full TV series?
No, we didn't. We thought about applying, and Steve actually suggested maybe applying as we had kind of just opened conversations with him, that maybe this conversation could push over to the show as opposed to finalising within the confines. Challenging thing with that was that Sarah was 7.5 months pregnant. So we toyed with the idea of just me doing it, but it's not the truth of how our business was at that stage. You know, I'd been in it for a couple of months and I'd feel a bit strange going into it on my own, saying, hey, I'm here pitching about my sister's business called Travelshoot, and I wasn't even fully across how it all worked yet. So we did think about it, but no, I mean, I think there's some really massive benefits to Shark Tank, but at that point for us, it wasn't the right choice.
Sure. What about next? What's next for Travelshoot?
What's next? I think, even though I'm kind of going to contradict myself here, we do want to go after more channel partners. There's some ancillary channel partners that we're working on at the moment. Some random left field ones. We have an agreement with a really big jeweler throughout Australia who are going to do a campaign on capturing the moment she says yes. So basically, for every engagement ring that's sold, Travelshoot will be front and center on the people that will get the photo of her saying yes. We are aware that we will probably capture some no's as well, but that'll be a gallery that we might keep to ourselves, which would be pretty funny. So that's a space that we're looking at. Hotels as well. It's a little bit harder because it's not something that you can really book while you're in destination. We need some lead time to organise it with our photographers. But offering packages that include like a honeymoon package, for instance, with a Travelshoot experience included. QT hotels around Australia have launched a package with us, like a Travelshoot staycation, which is really cool, and just trying to get some other premium hotels on. But the big one is probably online. I think Australia's a little bit of an anomaly. Like Flight Centre is, such a big player in the travel space here, but you look to find the same business in the States and it doesn't exist. It's online. So, the dream result would be being on that checkout page. Do you want insurance or Travelshoot? Chances of that happening soon, probably slim, but that's kind of the goal, is to get, to get connected with some of those sites. We are selling through some of those online platforms already, but to be kind of more, an invested relationship between one of those companies and us, where we're being offered more frequently.
Okay, and what's the market strategy in terms of Australia versus overseas?
Our focus at the moment is still definitely Australia outbound. There's some obvious markets as well, like, you know, the size of our market compared to the US. Even when you're looking at like Facebook ads and targeting, it's so small comparatively. So I think our digital marketing strategy will be more global. But in terms of our channel partner market, it'll be Australian channel partners.
Okay. Got a couple more questions coming in because there's about 10 minutes left. So first one is, so you've launched the Elope package.
Yep.
Are there any other products under development right now that you can share?
We've got a few things we're toying with, but nothing. I guess it's one of those things you want to nail some stuff. You want to nail the things you're good at first before doing too much. We keep getting pushed and pulled, you know, do photo books. And it's like, but then we become a printing company and we don't want to do that. So we did a deal with a photo book company to offer it as a post-purchase thing. Videography is a massive one that we keep getting asked about. Do we offer videography? I think that's probably still a little bit of time away. I don't know whether, and again, I can't say this confidently because we haven't done the testing around it yet. I don't know whether there's a market there yet for travel videography. It's an assumption. I personally don't think that market is quite there yet, where people would want to have video and photography for an hour in New York. I think the photos are the really critical thing at the moment, but that might change. Like how quickly Instagram and Facebook have evolved. So that's probably the next big one for us to keep monitoring is videography.
On Instagram, there's actually a question about how important that is for your business.
It is important. It's a really hard one. Like I struggle with Instagram a little bit just because it's a hard thing to monitor in terms of like really pulling out valuable metrics from Instagram to see whether your business is performing well. You know, we got some people, it's worked well for us sometimes where people jump on our page and they love the images on the page and it's so visual. We don't have a massive following. I think we've got 30-something thousand followers, which have all come fairly organically just through this travel content. But whether they're just people that love looking at travel content like I do, or whether they're actually our customer that want to buy, we do get some cut through from Instagram in terms of people coming from their followers and buying. But I also think Instagram sometimes can be one of those things that people use as like a metric for their business and they probably shouldn't. You know, if you've got 50,000 followers but it doesn't get you any revenue, then what's the point? It's an aspirational branding thing, which is cool, but if it's not driving traffic to your website and converting to sales, yeah.
Makes sense. What other avenues have you entertained to monetize your content?
We thought about, when I first came on, we have a partnership with a company in the States who were selling images, kind of like a Getty Images, but like a luxury version of that, where they were selling kind of, I guess, more aspirational photos, travel-oriented. That market has changed a lot. The value of an image, of just a general image, probably isn't worth as much now as it was 5 years ago, just by virtue of GoPro and all of these other products coming out. The value of the content, though, for us is probably more so in engaging with other channel partners. So, as an example, we go to partner Qantas and say, hey, look, we've got this product. We've got all of these images of your customers in destination. The photos of them sitting on the plane aren't very exciting, but the photo of them while they're there, like having the time of their life in New York, and they're a Qantas customer, that's worth something. So it's really offering access to our channel partners to that content for them to be able to reuse and market. We did set up the business from the outset that we own the intellectual property of the images, so both our photographers and the customers sign over their rights to the photo. Obviously, we have to get consent from the customer to use those photos, but the photographers was the bigger one, and they sign their right over that we can use those images for marketing to offer them to partners.
Okay, and has that been a deal breaker for any photographers?
For some photographers, it has been. Most of them don't mind as long as they're credited. And obviously, if their photos are used for a big campaign, they'll be credited. We thought that we would have, and it's again built into the photographer terms and conditions, that if we ever monetize the sale of those images, obviously the majority of that money has to go to the photographer. So we kind of made an agreement with photographers that 70% of any income off the back of those photos would go to them. And that's also a feel-good story, I guess, to the customer to want to share the consent for those images, is that, you know, we're selling this photo for $100, 70 of those dollars go to the photographer. You've loved the experience. Are you happy to help support the photographer? And we give them that money. So, but that's probably pivoted a little bit more so that we're using that content to engage with partners as opposed to actually monetizing the photos themselves.
Cool. Getting lots of audience questions. Next one's, what are the expectations or returns that your investors are expecting?
Massive. To be honest, I think it's one of those things, like we put out a financial model when we sat down with the investors and said, hey, this is where we want to be. And we just sat down with other startups and said, what's this metric? Like, what should we be aiming for? What's realistic? And our investors didn't like, Steve's pretty, you know, he's done this plenty of times. And the guys at CEA that we're working with who are awesome as well, they've done it heaps of times as well. And they realise that number that you're pitching to them on day one becomes irrelevant 6 months later. So obviously, you know, it's a multiplier of what they invested and we're committed to making it work. But I think if you know, we kind of said it can be anywhere from, you know, 5x to 100x. Like, who knows? Like, it's ambiguous. And I think the big tick in terms of them being our investors was that they're cool with that.
Excellent. What's keeping you up at night, apart from your new niece?
The things that I hate and I still don't understand. Finances. I fucking hate Xero. I know it's a simple tool that helps you bookkeep, but I hate it. I fucking hate Xero. The things that we could be doing, but there's just not enough time, like, or budget, you know, like now that I've kind of found this little, like, now that I've found Facebook ads and all these plugins to Facebook ads, like Ad Espresso and all these other like cool little tools, I want to run like 1,000 tests at all time. And like I sit on my phone checking my app to see which one's got a better click-through rate than the other. And if we had $1 million to spend on ads a week, I'd spend it because I find that really interesting. But not having that budget there is a bit restrictive. So that keeps me up at night a little bit. And then obviously, you know, like revenue, you know, there's a microscope on us to some degree. As soon as you take investment, you've got to perform. So, you know, we have a really good week one week and then it's like, okay, we've got to beat that the next week. And if we don't, like, it's a bit of a letdown, but it's, you know, we've got to kind of make sure that it's kind of, you're looking at things month to month or like quarter to quarter rather than day to day, because some days are just shit. And other weeks are just, you know, for whatever reason, they don't perform well. But looking at it sort of a little bit broader has helped.
Awesome. Final question. Have you registered the trademark Travelshoot globally or just in Australia?
Selective. So the trademarking thing, like, again, something that I should have said that keeps me up at night. The trademarking thing is really tough because it's very expensive to do globally, the name, the word, the logo not so much, but it's like a risk question, isn't it? Like, what's the chances of someone jumping in and taking it in another market, particularly one that isn't as big as, say, the US, Canada, Japan, and Australia. So we've kind of ticked the boxes on the ones that we think are important, but we haven't done it globally purely because of the expense. It's like, are we better off trying to grow this thing to a point where we don't have to worry about that as much, or growing it to a point where we've got the income that we can go and then do it globally, versus setting it up and having this massive contingency, but it taking money away from actually growing the business.
Awesome. Tim, thanks so much for your time. That's been an hour. It's gone quickly.
Shit.
Thank you for coming all the way from the Goldie. Thanks everyone for your questions, and I'd just like to thank Tim and our startup Grindway by a round of applause.
Thank you.